All right. So welcome everybody to my webinar on deconstructing cravings. I'm hoping that I can give you some insight tonight into why you might be craving some of the foods that you do. If we've not met before, my name is Jennifer, and my passion is to educate and motivate others to achieve their optimal health. I'm here as a facilitator, but above all, a support system to help you in any way that I can. I am a certified holistic nutrition coach, health coach, and that's what I do. Is rather than just providing information to people, is to really support them to implement the changes that they want to make to take control of their health. So my goal today for you is to help you identify and deconstruct your cravings so you can understand better what's going on. And as I said, if you've got any questions during our time, just pop into the Q&A box, type in your question there, and I'll do my best to respond to you. You could also email me with any questions that you may have that come up after, or if you're watching the recording of this, then please shoot me off an email and I'll get back to you. Okay, so your body doesn't make mistakes, okay? You don't need to remind yourself, your body, to breathe, to pump the blood, to maintain temperature, or even to heal. So why do we look at cravings in our bodies as, that our bodies are initiating as signs of weakness or lack of self-control? Because I think that's what a lot of people do, right? They see a craving and they get down on themselves about it. And that's it's a communication device is what it is, okay? It's our bodies actually trying to tell us something, and we just need to listen. And we may not get it right the first time, right? It's just like communication with anything. Sometimes it takes some practice, right, to get the answers that we're looking for. So what I want you to do is the next time that you're craving a particular food or a particular type of food, stop and ask yourself, what does your body want and why? You might be surprised at the answer. It may not come right away. As I said, it takes some practice in communicating. So why we crave? There's a number of different reasons why we might crave different foods, different types of foods, or very specific foods. And cravings are just one of the ways that our body communicates what we need in order to be healthy. Keep in mind that it's not always just physical, that there's an emotional component to cravings as well. And we'll touch on that a little bit tonight as well. So some of the underlying causes, as I said, cravings are one of the ways that our bodies communicate what we need in order to be healthy. And so regardless of what that craving is for, the root can usually be attributed to one of these primary causes. So, and we're going to get into these in more detail, but I've separated them into more physical causes like dehydration, lack of nutrients, hormones, and seasonal, okay? Like the change of seasons, if you happen to live in a place where you can actually see the difference and notice the difference in the seasons. And then more on the emotional, energetic, spiritual side of things, your lifestyle, your ancestry, self-sabotage, and habits. So we'll take a look at each of these things in greater detail tonight. Okay, and all the while, I want you to think about why do you think you crave? What are your reasons? And they could be different from day to day, or there could be one that kind of overshadows the others. We're going to start with dehydration. Yep, water again. And I could spend all of our time together discussing the importance of proper hydration. We need it for everything. All of the cells in your body require water. It's required for the maintenance of every function in your body. Okay, water, water, water. It's really, really important. So we lose water, sweating, through digestion, right? And breathing. And you may not have thought of that one, but you know, if you go and you breathe on your hand or you breathe on a mirror and you see the fog that comes, well, there's water in that, right? And so the signals that you're going to get when you're dehydrated, yes, your body will tell you you're thirsty, but oftentimes it comes up as hunger. So your body doesn't even send the thirsty signal until you're already 2% dehydrated. And so that's where there's some confusion come in. A lot of times it comes up as I'm hungry, when really what it is I'm thirsty. So what can you do there? At the first sign of a craving, drink a full glass of water. Give yourself 5 minutes. If it was thirst, then that is going to help to satisfy that thirst. And then what you thought may have been hunger craving is gone. So first thing to do, drink a glass of water, because likely you're not drinking enough water anyway. And so that's just a good way to go. All right. So drink a full glass of water, and then wait a few minutes and see how that changes things. All right. Crazy cravings. You may want to trust the crazy cravings as well, because again, our bodies are incredibly accurate machines. So inadequate nutrition can produce cravings for specific things depending on what's needed. The messages can also be skewed, but it's still something to listen to if you're craving a specific thing. So lack of nutrients. So typically, if we're lacking in energy, then we are going to crave either caffeine, right? That's a big one for a lot of people. Also sugar, right? If you're feeling a little down, you need a little bit of extra energy, and you think, okay, if I just have a little bit of sugar, then I'm going to get that boost and it's going to raise me up. If we are lacking in sodium, then we're going to crave salty foods. Okay, our body again telling us, hey, you need some salt here. It's not the only reason that you would crave salty foods, but it is one of them. Magnesium. Dark chocolate is a really good source of magnesium. And yes, I probably mentioned chocolate in most of my webinars, and sorry for that, but that's just the way it is. There are other good sources of magnesium, but chocolate's the best. So if you're low on magnesium, again, that could be one of the reasons that you're craving chocolate. Lack of calcium in your diet could cause a craving for cheese or ice cream or other kind of dairy. Cravings for meat, it could be that you're low on iron. Fatty foods, omega-3 fats, they're very, very important to a lot of our body processes, including our brain health. And this one, I didn't realize until I was doing some research for this webinar, is that if you're lacking in zinc, that you could actually have cravings for sweet and salty foods, because a lack of zinc can cause a dulled sense of taste, which I thought was really amazing. I know that personally that I tend to get fairly low in zinc, and I need to supplement zinc in my diet. And I'll tell you that that's where my cravings are, is for sweet and or salty foods. And so I'm curious. I'm really going to play with this one a little bit more, and make sure my zinc levels are up, and see if that helps out with those cravings. So, and this is not a complete and total list, but these are some of the common ones. So in looking at this list, apply that to your life. What nutrients could it be that you are lacking? Again, it's a really good opportunity to refine the communication that we have with our bodies. Craving salty foods is not always a lack of sodium, okay? But it could be. So it's one of those things. It's open up those lines of communication and get to learn what your body's telling you. Hormones. So hormones are special chemical messengers. Right? When we think of hormones, we think of primarily our sex hormones, things like estrogen, testosterone, but we've got over 50 different types of hormones, and they all play a major role in most of our major bodily functions. For instance, insulin is actually a hormone. I'm sure you've heard of insulin, but you may not have recognized that it was a hormone. So hormones, they're chemicals that excite or stimulate cells to do different things. Okay, they're the ones that go and turn the switches on. And when our hormones are in proper balance, the hormones help your body to thrive. But it's a balance. So if they're in excess or you're deficient, then they can trick the body pretty easily. Okay, so things like your sex hormones, especially in women, changes in your female cycle, because from the time of puberty, estrogen and progesterone go through a monthly cycle where they get higher and lower, and there's usually cravings involved with that, most likely for sugar, and that's because of the link to serotonin. So serotonin is a neurotransmitter in our brain. It's that feel-good neurotransmitter, the one that we just, you feel all warm and fuzzy, happy with serotonin. And what happens is when you eat sugar, you get that same feel. Okay, it doesn't actually increase serotonin, but you get that feel. So that's why a lot of times sugar is sort of that go-to comfort food. Now, things like that I've got here, insulin, ghrelin, and leptin are all digestive hormones, okay? So they're hormones that deal with in our digestive system. Insulin balances our blood sugar, okay? So it keeps it so that it's not too high, not too low. It's supposed to keep it in balance. Remember, I mentioned hormones are all about balance. Ghrelin, you may have heard of that one. That's an appetite stimulator, okay? So that tells you that you're hungry. Whereas leptin is it's a hormone that helps maintain body weight by regulating your satiety. So do you feel full? All right, so that's what the leptin is all about. So the ghrelin um, uh, stimulates your appetite, and leptin is the one that tells your body, no, I'm full. Okay, so if these are out of whack and your body's not picking up the signals from these properly, then chances are you're going to have weird cravings or likely overeat. Cortisol is another hormone, and this is the hormone that's released by your adrenal glands that's all wrapped up with stress. Okay, so if you are experiencing a lot of stress in your life, you're not dealing with your stress well, then that can throw off your hormones, and that can cause major problems with cravings for eating. For people that have trouble, they wake up in the middle of the night, typically it's cortisol levels are dropping so low that it's then waking you up to say you need to eat, right? And that's what that's all about. So sometimes if that's the case, then having a little bit of something to eat like nuts before bed can really help to keep you sleeping through the night. So it's really important to understand, how do you ride these waves, because these hormones they're not always the same all the time. They're up and down, up and down. And how do you deal with that balance? Sometimes it's I think best to just ride the wave. Recognize that you go through cycles, and to go easy on yourself when you're going through one of those cycles where your body is saying, I just need some love and attention and sugar. And maybe that's the time of the month that you eat a little bit more sugar than you normally would. And I'm not suggesting that you eat sugar. I'm just saying that listening to your body and riding the wave rather than fighting it could actually do a lot of good. Okay, seasonality was something that was on the list. So our bodies are much more in tune with nature than we often give them credit for. Now, we've kind of gotten away from this because we have the privilege of whatever food we want whenever we want it, okay? It really wasn't that long ago that you couldn't get fresh tomatoes in the grocery store in the winter in Canada. I imagine there's other places on the planet you can, but and so we've lost that. We can get whatever food we want whenever we want it now. So, so this might feel a little odd. However, there is a great amount of history behind this. And so it's no surprise that we often will crave seasonal foods in their natural time of year. And that really makes sense as well, because the foods that are seasonal foods tend to be more nutritious because we're getting them locally during the season that they grow. So some of the things to just be aware of: in the winter, we're going to crave hot, fatty foods, things like meat and fat and spices, things to warm us up. Okay. Whereas in the spring, we're looking for more detoxifying foods. We want to clean things out, like spring cleaning, like our house, opening up all the windows and let all that fresh air come in and take out all the stale winter air. So things like leafy greens and citrus fruits are a lot of times, it's like, I don't want a salad at all in the winter, but come spring, I can't get enough of them, okay? In summer, we're looking at cooling foods, so raw vegetables, berries, ice cream. Ice cream probably not the healthiest choice, but we'll get into that. And then in the fall, grounding foods, things like squash, root vegetables, nuts, things like that. Okay. And so if you live in an area of the planet, a geographical area where you have really defined seasons, then you may notice that your body craves different foods at different times of the year. And what I want to suggest is that might be a craving that you want to give into, and try and eat a little bit more seasonally. Okay, so lifestyle was one of the things that was on the list, and it's important. So the last four that we looked at: dehydration, nutrient deficiencies, hormones, and seasonality. Those are all things that we can kind of put our finger on. Now we're getting into the more, as I said, emotional, energetic, spiritual side of things, because we are not machines. Humans are very, very intricate, and so there's a lot that goes into your health, more than just what food and water we take in. So as an example, even if you have an ideal diet, but you're in a continuously high stress state, your health is going to be compromised. You could be eating perfectly, but if you're not dealing with your stress well, then you're going to have poor health. So it's looking at those things as well, because it's these lifestyle things that can actually create cravings as well. So it's relevant. All of this is relevant to your cravings. You need to look at all of these areas, things like career, what do you do for work, or volunteer if that's what you do. Family, relationships, community, how connected are you to the people around you? Your physical activity, your level of physical activity. How well are you sleeping, and what are your stress levels? Like, how do you cope? And if you're not fulfilled in these areas of your life, then there will likely be cravings for food, especially if getting treats were part of your upbringing, right, as a child. So if you were good, you'd get this. If you behaved well, you did this. If you did all your work, all of your homework or whatever, you got this treat. Then it would mean that the harder you worked at something and the more you got something done, then you would treat yourself with food, right? And that happens if that was there when as part of your upbringing, then that's there as a child, and that's really really deep part of you. So it's something to be aware of. So if you are in an uninspiring career or job, maybe an unsustainable exercise routine, maybe you've bitten off more than you could chew, or maybe you're thinking, oh, I need to exercise more, and you're not, and so you're getting down on yourself about that, then all of these things can actually lead to cravings for food, right? Because food is the ultimate in comfort, right? When you think about how babies come into the world, and one of the first things we do is we feed them, and it's not just for the nutrients, it's not just for the nourishment, but it's for the comfort as well. And that's why you've got the term comfort food, right? It's all of those things that we try and make ourselves feel better by eating what we're eating. Okay, and I don't mean feel better physically, it's feeling better emotionally. So taking a look at your lifestyle, where do you feel less than fulfilled? These may not tell you why you're craving the foods that you're craving, but it may give you some insight into why you're craving them in the first place, craving anything. Ancestry. So I just talked briefly about this when talking about seasonality, because there's emerging research that's showing that how even the events that our ancestors experienced affect our health today. Really, when you think about it, the way that we live now is just a small little blip in the history of the human race. And so what you have to think about here is your ancestry. And what I'm talking about is not just your genetics, but your geography, right? Because what happens if the generations of your family that lived before you lived by the sea, or they lived in the desert, or in the tropics? I mean, the foods that were available in those areas prior to logistics and transportation and things like that, foods that were available, that's what they would be eating, right? So if you lived by the sea, you're eating a lot of fish, and seaweed and things like that. So maybe even a higher salt intake. So if you've got generations and generations of ancestors behind you, then it just goes to show, it makes sense that then you would have cravings for those foods. Okay. Family traditions as well. I mean, family traditions can be so strong. I mean, how many people, when you think of Thanksgiving, you're thinking of turkey and mashed potatoes and gravy and stuffing and those kinds of things. And that when a Thanksgiving comes and goes without those things, you might be craving them because you didn't fulfill that tradition that way that it's always been in your family. If you always had dessert after dinner, then it could be that you simply crave this because that's the way you've always known it. Okay? So thinking about those things on a deeper level may help you to understand why you crave some of the things that you crave. So what connections could you make there between your ancestry and the cravings that you experience now? All right. So self-sabotage, that was the next thing on the list. De-evolution, okay, sometimes referred to as self-sabotage syndrome. It means that when things are going well, we tend to make choices to turn things towards going poorly. So, I mean, we could spend an awful lot of time talking about why. The thing is that only you can answer that question. And I realize here that my slide is incorrect, so please bear with me on this one. So self-sabotage, there are many people out there that are simply not comfortable when things are not going well in their lives. So when things start to go well, we begin to crave things that send us into imbalance because we're not comfortable with the happiness, if you will, okay, when things are good. So what happens is our first craving then creates another in response to that to try and balance out the first one. And then we can get caught in a downward spiral, okay, because you eat too much sugar, your insulin goes out of whack, now your hormones are out of whack, and then it can cause all kinds of other things, all right? So self-sabotage syndrome, it can cause cravings with the main goal of backtracking. And I know that sounds really crazy. And you think, okay, but I want to get healthy. I want to lose weight. I want to sleep better. All of those things. I want to stop, giving into these cravings. But you have to remember that if there's some of this self-sabotage there, then you're going to backtrack and you're fighting an uphill battle there. So and I mentioned before that cravings shouldn't be seen as a weakness, okay? There's something that's there. But what you need to realize with the self-sabotage is why that might be going on, right? What's going on here? And the only way that you're going to get to the bottom of that is to really dig into the beliefs that you hold, okay? Your underlying beliefs about your own success and happiness, because that could be the answer behind this. Okay, and it could be, if you're like me and you wake up in the morning and you've got this great willpower and you make great food choices all day long, and then come evening, there's just something that hits. And I've mentioned before that I know that my zinc is low historically, and so I'm going to try to, to work on getting my zinc up, because it's come that evening time, that 8-9 o'clock at night, when finally my day is over and I've got some time to myself, and it's like, okay, well, what can I eat now? And that's when all of the well-meaning healthy stuff goes out the window, and I want to pull for other things. So am I self-sabotaging? Am I trying to self-soothe? Am I trying to is there part of my life that's not fulfilling and I'm trying to fill it with food? I don't know, right? And your answers to those questions are going to be much different than mine. I think part of mine has to do with habit. So habits, this is what habits come down to: awareness. Because one of the things that I recognized was that when I am out of my normal routine, okay, so I mentioned to you that for me, in the evening is when I have most of my cravings will surface. Rarely do I experience a craving throughout the day. But at night, that's when I typically have the hardest cravings to get through. But what I've noticed is that when I am out of routine and I'm not in my home, or I'm out and I'm doing things, that I don't have those cravings. So is it nutrient deficiency? Well, not likely, because if it was a nutrient deficiency, then I would have those cravings regardless of what's going on in the rest of my life, right? If it's that something's not fulfilling in my life, well, maybe if I'm out and I'm hanging out with friends or family and I'm doing something like that, then maybe it's filling that. But I think that for me, a lot of it comes down to as soon as I finish up the tidying up of the house and the dishes, and I sit my rear end down on the couch, that it's just a habit. And where it comes from, after the whole bedtime routine with my daughter and put her down, and then I finally had time to myself, and I was going to reward myself with a treat that goes back to when I was a kid. I don't know, right? But I think that habits can play a huge role in your cravings. So habits, I want you to think about when you're on autopilot versus when you're really self-aware, okay? So same place, same time, same foods, it's a good chance that it's a habit. So habits, there's a cue, there's a routine, and then there's a reward, and it just perpetuates the habit. So the best way to get out of habits is just to be self-aware, right? Really think about, am I hungry right now? What is it that I'm craving? Why might I be craving that? Is it that I'm hungry? Is it that I'm thirsty? Do I have a nutrient deficiency? And if all of those are no, then there's something else that's going on there, and it may be as simple as a habit. So something to think about. Whew. Okay, so everyone experiences cravings at some point, but not everybody has the knowledge to identify where they're coming from. So did any of those common causes of cravings particularly resonate with you? Maybe all of them did. Maybe there were a few. That's just where you get started, okay? And what we do is we just come in with the good, all right? It's not a matter of banishing the bad, just add more good in, right? As I said, when you've got the craving, drink a glass of water. Take a look at those major list of nutrients, right? And maybe that's what you're looking for. Maybe that's what your body is looking for, that it's deficient in some nutrients. And giving it those nutrients and your cravings will go away. Maybe you need to fill your life with more connections with friends and family, okay? To have a more fulfilling personal life, all right? And maybe that's where you need to go with it. When you start to add those things in, all of those good, healthy things, then what's going to happen is it's going to push out the unproductive cravings. And keep in mind that it's all about choice. So when you're craving something salty, you can actually mix some unrefined salt, some unrefined sea salt or Himalayan salt into a glass of warm water and drink it. If you are really deficient in sodium, and that's why you're craving the salt, then that should satisfy that craving, okay, in a healthy way. If you're still craving salty food, then maybe it's not a nutrient deficiency. But going for a bag of salty chips, that's not the best choice, right? So there are healthy choices that you can choose. Taking a look at the seasonality, right? I tend to want more carbohydrates and more starchy foods as it starts to get colder. Not so much salad. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm not going to think about, oh, how do I get my fresh raw veggies into me? I'm going to have lots of soups. Okay, so it's all about the choice on that. All right. So what is it that we crave? Now, I've mentioned a few things, but typically most cravings can be identified in the following categories. You've got sweet, which is probably a craving for most people. Salty. Some people will crave bitter. Okay. And we're going to talk about these a little bit further. So we'll see why they might be cravings for you. Pungent, spicy, creamy or crunchy. And I read something recently about why you might crave crunchy things, and I'll share that with you when we get there. Moist, dry, you may be craving dry foods, or light or heavy foods. So let me know. You can type something in the Q&A if you like about what types of cravings, what are the things that really get you? What are your top two? Okay, so let's get into the sugar, because that's fairly typical for people to have to crave sweet things. Okay, it's certainly not unusual, and in all honesty, your body's asking for more energy. Okay, a sugar craving is your body asking for more energy, because we all need energy. So what happens is when it's digested, sugar turns into fuel, better known as glucose, And the rate at which that sugar is converted depends on what kind of sugar is consumed. That's why refined white sugar in baked goods acts really differently in your body versus a nutrient-dense sweet vegetable like a beet that you see here in the slide. So when these cravings strike, it's important to feed your body sugar that digests slower and is paired with a healthy amount of fiber. Okay, so some examples: sweet potatoes, carrots, beets, winter squash, berries. Okay, berries are great. Try those yummy vegetables and fruits before going straight to the cake. Okay, as I mentioned before, it's about choices, right? So your body could be craving sugar, excuse me, because it needs energy. You can actually feed it with good, good energy that's full of other nutrients as well. Okay, rather than just empty sugar. Salty. So salt cravings are a really good example of your body communicating what it needs. It is a mineral. Our bodies truly need it. And with the connection that was made between salt and high blood pressure, people tend to shy away from salt. And it's about balance. It is really, really important to balance it out, because salt helps us to maintain a proper fluid balance. It helps us with our blood pressure, and also with nerve signals. So it's to go like a totally no salt diet is not healthy at all. You actually need salt in your body. And the salt and potassium balance is really, really important. So to feed this craving and your body's need for more nutrition, you want to skip the processed salty food, like I mentioned, the bag of potato chips, and you want to go with healthy alternatives. So as I mentioned, an unrefined high-quality sea salt or Himalayan salt, adding that to your foods. Now, salt is amazing because it actually will help enhance the natural flavor of the food. Okay, and using sea salt or Himalayan salt, it actually provides your body with over 60 different trace minerals as well. Okay, and not just the sodium. So now, if chips are one of those things that you go to and you've got a craving for a salty snack and you just want to get that bag of chips, you might want to try some baked kale chips. Now, I understand that they're quite pricey when you buy them already made. They're super simple to make. So you can use whatever kale you want. You can use the curly kale or the dinosaur kale. It makes no difference at all. You just tear it up into small pieces. And then you coat it with some oil, your oil of choice. If you're going to do it in a low oven, you can use olive oil, or avocado oil would be best, or some coconut oil. And then sprinkle some high quality sea salt or Himalayan salt on it, maybe some other spices if you like as well. And then bake it in the oven. And you can do a really low oven, 200, 250 degrees for longer, 30 minutes. Or you can do a higher oven, 350. Again, just watch the oil that you're using. You don't want to go too high heat with the oil. For long enough that they become brittle, okay? And then you take them out of the oven, you let them cool, and then you've got these chips. And so they're like a potato chip in that they're crunchy and they're salty, and they have that fat from the oil, but you've also got all the nutrients of the kale in there as well, okay? And they're not deep fried, so that makes them even healthier for you. Okay, so I mentioned bitter was one of the things that you may have a craving for, and likely it's not as common a craving as sugar, but bitter foods, they represent potential digestive issues, because bitter foods actually aid in healthy digestion and detoxification. The best foods to help our liver, which is a detoxifying organ in our body, some of the best foods to support our liver are bitter foods. Okay, and so oftentimes a really deep green like arugula is quite bitter. Dandelion greens are bitter. Mustard greens, kale, collards, those kinds of things can all be. In fact, even cocoa, which I don't know with the chocolate, but the higher percentage of cocoa that you get in chocolate is actually quite bitter. If you've ever used just pure cocoa powder, you know that it's kind of hard to stomach without a little bit of sugar to it, because it's so bitter. All of those things are great for your digestion and detoxification. You may have heard of of bitters before, Swedish bitters or digestive bitters, and they're actually extracts of bitter foods that actually help people with their digestion. So the next time you're craving something bitter, instead of maybe going for a cup of coffee or something like that, then try some bitter greens. Okay. All right, bringing the heat. So pungent foods. Pungent foods are what would produce what is considered a dry heat. They can also help with digestion. So sometimes you get a craving for, like a really spicy Chinese food or Mexican food. And it doesn't come as a surprise that a lot of the ingredients in those meals are peppers and other things that are quite pungent. And you can fulfill that craving by incorporating those spicy foods into what it is you're cooking. Okay, oftentimes going out for a takeout meal of Chinese food or Mexican food, there's other things in there. In fact, most Chinese food that I've seen, there's sauces, there's going to be a lot of sugar and things like that. So don't be afraid of spicing up what you're cooking. Okay, adding things like onions and garlic and spices like cayenne pepper instead of just salt, right? Use those pungent spices for flavors, and they will help you with your digestion. All right. Again, more on spices. So spicy cravings usually is often accompanied by poor circulation. So think of it as your body's way of telling you need to heat things up. If you've got cold hands, I've got cold hands and cold feet regularly. And so spicy foods can help with the circulation. So not just increasing the heat in your body, but also circulating it around, right? You don't want all the heat just to sit there in your tummy. You want it to go out to your extremities as well. But again, when we're thinking about hot, spicy foods, lots of times that means, prepared foods, things like that. All you need to do is add some spices to what it is you're cooking. Okay, again, onions and garlic, cayenne pepper, even black pepper can be spicy enough to spice things up to your meals. Okay, so think about what's your go-to spice when you've got a craving that strikes. All right, so creamy or crunchy. The mouth feel of your food can also be a topic of craving. I know that's what it is for me. There's times where I want something crunchy. Not so much the creamy, but crunchy is one thing for me. And so, so it could be that the creamy cravings are because you're eating too many dry foods, and so you need to kind of balance out that wet dry. And crunchy cravings, it could be that you're trying to balance out milk or oily foods. But I was reading something, heard something somewhere that was saying that you may be craving crunchy foods because there's an anger issue, because the crunch is kind of like and it's a way to actually feel some anger. So whether it's a suppressing of anger or you're just feeling angry, and I thought that was really, really interesting. So the next time I have a craving for something crunchy, that I'm going to have to check in to see, where am I at emotionally? Am I suppressing something, or am I feeling overly angry? But I thought that was quite interesting. Moisture dry. So it could be, balance. It could be that maybe you are, it's come spring and you're getting into all kinds of nice, moist, fresh fruits and vegetables. Then you may be craving some drier foods. Or it could be the other way around. You're eating a lot of dry foods and you just want to consume more liquids, right? Soups, smoothies, juices, that kind of thing. So it could just be that. It could be the balance. So take a look at what you're consuming, right? Again, awareness is the biggest part of all of this. I know I've said that before in some other webinars. Heavy or light. So the load of foods or how they feel, right? And you know this, right? I'm sure that you've eaten a meal where afterwards you feel like, oh my God, it feels like I just ate a ton of bricks. And others where you feel really light afterwards. And so it could be that if you're eating a lot of raw, cold foods, it's not going to be unlikely for your body to crave warm, heavy meals like meat. Again, seasonality plays into it as well, right? You may have a day where salad was all that was on your menu, and it's winter time, and all you want all you're craving is something warm and heavy, like a really meaty stew or something like that. So think about the light and heavy part of it as well. Okay. So understanding why you might be craving something is really going to go a long way in helping you to not give in to those cravings, okay? Because forbidding yourself from foods that can cause cravings, it can cause them to get even worse, right? Say, no, 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 I'm not going to eat this, can actually get you, make your cravings worse. That's one thing that I've noticed with myself. If I totally try to ignore it, it's like a 2-year-old, right? The more you ignore them, the louder they get. And so it's the same kind of thing. Whereas if you start to understand what it is that your body is telling you, and you deconstruct those cravings, understand where they're coming from, then you've got a better chance of breaking the cycle rather than just trying to snowplow your way through, I'm not going to eat this. Okay? Remember, your body doesn't make mistakes. It's all about finding that balance and about making healthy choices. All right. So cheers to deconstruction. I want to thank you for taking the time to experience this with me. I really like talking about this, sharing this topic with people who are eager to transform their health. Um, what I want you to understand is that if you've got any questions about anything that I've covered here, or anything that maybe I just mentioned in passing and you'd like to know a little bit more about, then please, post a question here or post a comment below the video, or email me. Okay, you can reach me at jenniferodonnellhealth at gmail.com. And if you're in the Elk Valley, you can also find me at Wild Heart Therapies and Pharmacy down on the highway in Fernie, because I'm just here to help, right? I want to support you. So thank you for sharing your Wednesday evening with me. And like I said, if you've got any questions, please feel free to reach out to me. All right. Thanks. Have a great night.